Karen tried to find me for lawn height, but froze when she learned I'm the town fire chief. They say no good deed goes unpunished. I learned that the hard way when I saved my town from burning to the ground, only to come home and get reported for not mowing my damn lawn. My name's Russell Crane, 43, fire chief of Bellwood County, population 6,000 on a busy weekend. I've been in the department 20 years, 10 of those in leadership. I don't brag, but people usually know who I am. That is, everyone except Karen Ellingsworth, the self-appointed HOA queen of Hawthorne Circle. I moved into the neighborhood 2 months ago after the city granted me a housing stipend to be closer to the central station. It was a quiet cul-de-sac, mostly retirees and a few young couples. I bought a modest one-story home with a big yard, something I hadn't had since my own father taught me how to mow in straight lines as a boy. I didn't expect much trouble. My job keeps me busy managing crews, responding to fires, coordinating rescue efforts. Truth is, I barely have time to sleep, let alone edge flower beds, but Karen noticed. The first note came a week after I moved in, a printout taped to my door. Please maintain your lawn to HOA standards. Unkempt grass attracts rodents. No name, no signature, just a picture of my slightly yellowed front yard. I tossed it in the trash, figured it was some harmless neighborhood nudge. The second time, she caught me pulling out of my driveway. "Sir," she called out, blocking the road with her arms folded. "The Hawthorne Circle HOA requires front yards to be mowed weekly. Yours is unacceptable." I smiled politely. "There's no HOA here. I checked before I bought the house." Her lips tightened. "We have a community agreement. I helped write it." "That may be ma'am, but unless it's registered and enforced by a legitimate board, it's not binding." She huffed like I'd just insulted her dog. "You'll hear from me again." I should have taken her seriously. That weekend, I worked a 38-hour shift straight. 4 brush fires had sprung up across the county. One nearly consumed a strip mall. I barely had time to eat. By Sunday night, I stumbled home, dropped my gear in the garage, and collapsed on the couch. At 6 a.m. Monday, I woke up to the sound of sirens. 2 police cruisers were parked outside my house. An ambulance pulled up behind them. My neighbor across the street stood in his bathrobe filming with his phone. I threw on a shirt and rushed outside. A uniformed officer turned to me. "You, Russell Crane?" "Yeah, what's going on?" "We got a 911 call about a hazardous property. Caller claimed you had flammable materials on an overgrown lawn." I blinked. "What?" "Said the grass posed a fire threat." I stared at my yard. It wasn't a putting green, sure, but it was nowhere near a fire risk. Ironically, I'd been the one who wrote our department's grass combustibility standards. Then I saw her. Karen stood at the edge of the sidewalk in a beige pantsuit and straw visor, clutching a clipboard like it was a badge. She was grinning. "I told you he was a danger," she said. I walked up to her slowly. "You called 911 over my lawn." She lifted her chin. "I have a duty to protect this community." "Lady," I said, "I am this community's fire chief." The look on her face worth every sleepless night I'd ever worked. But it didn't end there. The police had to follow up on the complaint. A fire marshal had to inspect my yard. My name ended up in a public incident log. Local news caught wind of it and showed up at the station asking questions. I didn't want to escalate, but Karen did. She distributed flyers accusing me of violating fire safety codes, claimed I used my position to endanger residents. She even told people I refused to answer 911 calls from the neighborhood out of spite. My crews were furious. I was livid. That's when I decided it was time to fight back. But not with anger, with facts, with law, and with a very public, very legal takedown of the fake HOA Karen claimed to represent. And trust me, she never saw it coming. By Monday morning, the voicemail at City Dispatch was flooded with tips, and my inbox was full of forwarded footage from half the town. Karen's outburst had gone viral. 3 different neighbors caught it from different angles. Each clip a slightly more humiliating portrait of her meltdown. One video in particular showed her yelling, "This is a fire hazard," while standing 2 feet from the sprinkler I'd turned on minutes earlier. The irony wasn't lost on the internet, but the real problem wasn't the drama. It was the precedent she was trying to set. Karen had filed a formal complaint with the neighborhood committee, not just about my yard, but my conduct. She accused me of neglecting emergency standards, allowing flammable materials to accumulate, and creating public panic. I had to read the complaint 3 times before I realized she was serious. "You're not going to let this slide. Are you my assistant chief?" Nolan asked over breakfast at the griddle that morning. He had 2 kids at Roosevelt Elementary, the same school where Karen had tried to ban a fire drill last fall because it scared her Shih Tzu. "I can't go after her the way she went after me," I said. "That's not how we fix this." "Maybe not," Nolan replied, sipping his coffee. "But we both know if this gets legs, it's gonna bite." The local paper ran a headline the next day: "Fire chief accused of fire hazard." Below it, a photo of my front yard taken from an angle that made the whole thing look like I lived in a landfill. Karen had clearly gone to great lengths to stage it. She even scattered some cardboard boxes on the curb that didn't belong to me. It was then I realized this wasn't just a nuisance. It was an agenda. I decided to call in a favor. Lieutenant Raina Marsh with the State Fire Marshal's office had been my friend since our academy days. I asked her to conduct a full code inspection, not because I had anything to hide, but because I needed it on the record. By Thursday, Raina was walking my property with a clipboard and a deadpan face. "This is probably the cleanest yard I've inspected all year," she muttered, eyes on her notes. "Did you edge your lawn with a ruler?" I laughed, but there was bitterness behind it. Karen's trying to make a public example out of me. She picked the wrong guy. We documented everything: the soil moisture, the fire break around the garage, the flammability rating on my native grass, which, ironically, was lower than the artificial turf she had illegally installed 2 years ago. When Raina filed the report, she didn't just clear me. She added a note to the county recommending a full audit of the HOA's enforcement committee. Karen's name was all over it. That's when things shifted. Karen showed up on my lawn again the next weekend, this time with 3 men in polo shirts and clipboards, self-proclaimed safety inspectors for the HOA. They started photographing my siding, my hose reel, even the mulch in the flower beds. My daughter, Leah, came outside in tears. One of them had shouted at her to move away from the hazard zone. That was it. I stepped out with my fire chief badge on my chest and a GoPro on my shoulder. "This property is not under HOA jurisdiction," I said calmly. "And you are trespassing. Leave now, or I'll call the sheriff." Karen turned, her face red, but she didn't speak. One of the clipboard guys tried to argue, but I cut him off. "You just intimidated a child. I have that on camera. If you step 1 foot closer, this becomes a criminal matter." They left, but 2 days later, a notice was taped to my door unsigned, unsealed, and clearly fake. It demanded a $500 fine for neglect of landscaping standards, with a threat to escalate to code enforcement. That's when I knew Karen was done playing fair. And I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to expose everything. The first thing I did was call my attorney, Leah Foster, a local powerhouse with a reputation for dismantling bad faith HOAs like a surgeon with a scalpel. She didn't even blink when I showed her the fake notice. "This isn't just overreach," she said. "This is harassment. And if we can tie it to misuse of HOA power, we have a public abuse case." I handed over the footage, the copy of Raina's report, and every email or letter Karen had ever sent. Leah's team got to work tracing signatures, confirming if those safety inspectors were even credentialed, and digging into Karen's time on the board. What they found shocked even me. Karen wasn't just overstepping. She was running an entire shadow operation within the HOA, issuing false citations, charging bogus fines, and funneling the money into a beautification fund she controlled. None of it was audited. And the kicker, the HOA's actual president had resigned 6 months ago. Karen had just filled the void. That weekend, I called a meeting, not an official one, just neighbors, people I trusted. Nolan came, Raina showed up. Even Miss Sun Delaney from the end of the block, who hadn't left her porch in 6 years, walked over with her walker. I stood in my driveway and laid it all out. The videos, the forged notices, the phony committee. Karen watched from her porch, arms folded tight. She's been using this HOA as a weapon, I said, not just against me, but against half of you, and it's time we take it back. Murmurs turned to nods, nods to claps, claps to cheers. The next morning, we submitted a petition to dissolve the current HOA board and elect new leadership. By the end of the week, 86% of the neighborhood had signed it. That Friday, Karen called 911 again, this time claiming I was inciting a mob. When the officers arrived, I met them at the curb with my badge, Raina's report, and the footage queued on my tablet. One glance at the evidence, and the lead officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this is not an HOA matter, and if you make one more false emergency report, you will be charged." Karen looked like she'd swallowed fire. But we weren't done. That weekend, the local news ran a segment, Fake HOA, Real Harassment Fire Chief's Lawn Sparks Community Reckoning. The camera caught Karen hurrying inside, slamming her door, while Nolan and I stood by the hydrant explaining fire code compliance. Karen's name wasn't just mud, it was now part of a state investigation. On Monday morning, I got a call from a state investigator named Carson Doyle. His tone was crisp but cordial, like someone who knew how deep these HOA abuses ran and was tired of seeing the same names come up again and again. "I've been reviewing the footage and Leah's documentation," he said. "We're opening a formal inquiry into Miss Callahan's actions and the structure of your HOA. But off the record, what's your read on this neighborhood?" I glanced out the window. Raina was walking her dog. Nolan waved from his truck. Miss Delaney was planting roses for the first time in years. "It's healing," I said. "People are waking up, and they're tired of being afraid." "Good," he replied. "We'll be in touch." "Oh, and tell your lawyer she's relentless." That same day, Leah filed a civil suit, fraud, harassment, defamation, misuse of community funds. We weren't just going to remove Karen. We were going to expose the entire rot she'd built. Karen, meanwhile, had gone radio silent. No more porch patrols, no more clipboard threats. But silence doesn't mean surrender. Around dusk, Raina came running up my porch, breathless. She's hosting a neighborhood safety meeting, but it's invitation only. And it's tonight. I didn't need to ask twice. I grabbed my jacket and called Nolan. He brought his drone. I brought a Bluetooth speaker and one more piece of evidence. Leah had just uncovered a receipt for nearly $7,000 in landscaping improvements made to Karen's personal yard billed to HOA dues. We didn't need to be in the room to be heard. From across the street, we flew the drone in, hovered just outside the window, and broadcast the receipt loud and clear. The footage caught Karen's face going white. One neighbor stood, then another, and another. 10 minutes later, someone stormed out. Then a flood. The private meeting ended in chaos. That night, 3 more neighbors joined our petition. By morning, the total was up to 93%. Karen tried to hold on. Of course, she filed a complaint against me again, claimed I had hacked her meeting and endangered residents with surveillance. But this time, the town council responded with their own notice due to overwhelming community concern and mounting legal evidence. Karen Callahan is hereby suspended from any HOA-related activities pending investigation. Raina rang my bell the next morning with a grin. "She's done," she said. "You did it." I shook my head. We did it. The final blow didn't come from me. It came from the people Karen had hurt for years. Leah scheduled a town hall this time, hosted at the local firehouse, open to all, no invitations, no clipboards, no fences, just raw truth. Every chair was filled. Neighbors brought folding seats. Reporters stood in the back. Even the mayor showed up, not in a suit, but in jeans and a windbreaker. One by one, neighbors stood and shared. Mrs. Delaney, voice shaking but clear, talked about how Karen fined her $200 for excess porch decorations when all she had was a bench and a flag. Nolan showed before and after photos of how Karen redirected HOA funds to power wash her own driveway, then left the public walkway to crumble. And I shared the original footage, the hydrant, the 911 call, my badge. And the truth, fire safety isn't optional, and neither is dignity. We don't get to decide someone's worth based on lawn height or mailbox design. The room erupted. Karen didn't attend, but her lawyer did silent in the back row, taking notes. 2 days later, the district attorney announced an official fraud investigation. Karen's assets were frozen. The bank statements told the rest of the story: thousands in fabricated fees funneled into personal use, backyard renovations, spa trips, even payments to a private investigator. She was arrested that Thursday. It wasn't dramatic. No cuffs on the lawn, no press conference, just 2 detectives at her door. She didn't resist, just packed a bag and left. The only sound, her gate creaking shut for the last time. In her absence, a new HOA board formed. Raina was voted president. Nolan, vice chair. Ms. Delaney even joined the gardening committee. The mood in the neighborhood shifted. Fences came down figuratively and literally. People spoke more, shared tools, checked in on one another. The hydrant I'd been fined over. We repainted it together, bright red, legal shade. Ms. Delaney added daisies around the base. Last week, I got a call from Chief Halverson, State Fire Marshal. Heard about your neighborhood revolution, he said. Mind if we use it in our training material? Use whatever you want. I told him. Just remind them fear spreads fast, but truth burns brighter. Karen's name faded. The lawsuits ended, but the message stuck. If you're reading this and you faced a fake HOA, an overreaching neighbor, or just someone trying to scare you into silence, don't fold. Ask questions. Call it out. Shine a light. Because justice doesn't start with a badge. It starts with someone saying enough. What would you have done? Share your thoughts below about justice, community, and where the line should be drawn. Let's keep the conversation going.